3 million documents, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. Locked away for years, and now suddenly released to the public. The question is no longer whether Jeffrey Epstein had secrets. The question is how much of the truth was buried with him. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and like this video, because what you're about to hear isn't conspiracy, rumor, or internet mythology. It comes from newly declassified government records. And some of it is forcing the world to rethink everything it believed about one of the most disturbing scandals of the 21st century. In early 2026, under the newly enforced Epstein Files Transparency Act, the U.S. Department of Justice began opening one of the largest archives ever connected to a criminal investigation. For years, people assumed the Epstein story had ended in that Manhattan jail cell back in 2019. They were wrong. Because when millions of pages suddenly become public, history doesn't stay buried. It detonates. The files map out a world that looks less like ordinary crime and more like a shadow ecosystem operating quietly alongside global power. Private jets crossing continents. Closed-door meetings with billionaires. Donations flowing into universities. Connections threading through politics, finance, royalty, and scientific institutions. For decades, Epstein positioned himself exactly where influence concentrates, near the people who shape the future. And yet even now, investigators are still trying to answer a question that feels almost impossible. Was Jeffrey Epstein a mastermind running a vast network? Or a predator hiding in plain sight behind powerful friendships? One of the biggest revelations from the newly analyzed documents stunned both journalists and federal investigators. For years, the public obsessed over the idea of a secret client list, a catalog of elite men supposedly participating in Epstein's crimes. But according to the FBI's February 2026 findings, no formal list was ever discovered. No ledger. No registry of powerful clients purchasing illegal services. Instead, investigators concluded something far more chilling in its simplicity. The evidence strongly suggests that Epstein himself was the primary abuser. Not the manager of a structured operation for others. Not the broker of an organized marketplace. Him. Alone at the center. Yet this conclusion raises a darker, more uncomfortable possibility. If there was no official network, how did he operate for so long without interruption? How did a man already convicted in 2008, a conviction so controversial it shocked legal experts, manage to return to elite society almost untouched? Remember that plea deal. 13 months in custody. Work release privileges. Freedom to move. Freedom to rebuild. To many prosecutors today, it looks less like justice, and more like a systemic failure. But the 2026 files are doing more than reopening old wounds. They are triggering new investigations across multiple countries. Authorities have launched probes into financial relationships, political connections, and alleged corruption tied indirectly to Epstein's orbit. Searches have reportedly reached the residence of a former British ambassador. A case has emerged involving a former Norwegian prime minister. The scandal is no longer confined to American soil. It never was. Because Epstein didn't just cultivate wealth. He cultivated proximity to power, the single greatest form of protection in the modern world. And nowhere is that proximity more visible than in the names appearing throughout the documents. Presidents. Tech giants. Royal figures. Wall Street titans. Nobel-level scientists. Important to note, appearing in the files does not equal criminal accusation. Many were linked through philanthropy, academic funding, social events, or brief encounters. But reputations are fragile things. And when your name surfaces inside a scandal of this magnitude, distance suddenly becomes a survival strategy. Yet perhaps the most anticipated moment of 2026 isn't about documents at all. It's about a woman who may know more than anyone still alive. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate. The woman convicted of recruiting underage girls. Now serving a 20-year federal sentence. On February 9, 2026, Maxwell was scheduled to testify remotely before a U.S. congressional committee. Lawmakers hoped she might illuminate the unanswered questions, expose the blind spots, maybe even clarify who truly understood what was happening behind the closed doors of Epstein's world. But her legal team delivered a message that instantly reignited public frustration. Maxwell would invoke the Fifth Amendment. She would not answer questions. She would not elaborate. She would not speak. And just like that, one of the last potential first-hand windows into Epstein's inner circle went dark. Again. Because if there is one pattern that defines the Epstein saga, it is silence. Silence from institutions. Silence from witnesses. Silence from people who may have seen more than they ever admitted. The newly released files are not just historical records. They are reminders of how close unimaginable abuse can exist to unimaginable power, and how often the two travel together. But to understand why this story continues to shake governments nearly 7 years after Epstein's death, we need to go back. Back to the deal that should have ended his life in freedom. Back to the moment the justice system blinked. Because long before the world knew his name, there was already evidence. Already victims. Already warnings. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. Long before the world demanded transparency, long before millions of documents were unsealed, there was a moment when Jeffrey Epstein could have disappeared into a prison cell permanently. Instead, the system hesitated. And that hesitation may have changed everything. The year was 2008. Federal investigators in Florida had already assembled what many believed was a devastating case. Dozens of underage girls had come forward. Testimony described a recruitment pipeline targeting vulnerable teenagers, girls who were often struggling financially, emotionally, or socially. Some were paid hundreds of dollars. Others were promised opportunity. Nearly all were too young to fully understand what they were walking into. Prosecutors initially prepared charges that could have put Epstein behind bars for life. But then something happened behind closed doors. Negotiations began. Elite defense attorneys entered the room, former federal prosecutors themselves, men who understood not only the law, but the pressure points inside it. What emerged from those negotiations would later be called one of the most controversial plea deals in modern American history. Instead of facing sweeping federal charges, Epstein pleaded guilty to far lesser state offenses. The punishments sounded serious on paper. 18 months. But reality told a different story. Epstein was granted work release privileges allowing him to leave jail for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He had access to a private office. He could meet clients, continue financial operations, maintain fragments of his empire. To outside observers, it barely resembled incarceration. Some victims were never even notified that the deal was being finalized, a decision later ruled to be a violation of federal law. Imagine discovering that the man accused of abusing you had negotiated his freedom, without your knowledge. Public outrage would come years later. But at the time, the story faded faster than anyone expected. Because power doesn't always silence through force. Sometimes it simply redirects attention. When Epstein walked free after serving roughly 13 months, he carried the legal label of registered sex offender. Yet socially, something astonishing happened. Many doors remained open. Private dinners continued. Financial relationships survived. Invitations still arrived. It was as if wealth itself had created a buffer between Epstein and consequence, a quiet force field reinforced by status. This is one of the most unsettling themes investigators now revisit when analyzing the newly released files. How did warning signs fail to trigger permanent exile? Because in elite environments, access is currency. And cutting someone off often means cutting yourself off from the network surrounding them. Over time, Epstein rebuilt his rhythm. His Manhattan townhouse once again hosted influential guests. His private island became synonymous with secrecy. His aircraft, later nicknamed by the media, continued transporting powerful passengers across continents. Photographs accumulated. Smiles at galas. Casual conversations. Moments that, years later, would be dissected frame by frame. Not necessarily as evidence of wrongdoing, but as evidence of proximity. And proximity, in scandals like this, can be reputationally radioactive. Yet while Epstein appeared to regain stability on the surface, something irreversible had begun underneath. Journalists started digging deeper. Survivors found the courage to speak publicly. Civil lawsuits reopened narratives many believed were buried forever. The story was no longer confined to courtroom transcripts, it was entering the national conscience. Still, few could predict just how violently it would erupt again. Because scandals rarely return quietly. They return when pressure becomes impossible to contain. In July 2019, that pressure exploded. Federal agents arrested Epstein at a New Jersey airport, charging him with sex trafficking of minors. This was not Florida. This was not a negotiated state plea. This was the full weight of the United States government. Denied bail, labeled an extreme flight risk, and facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars, Epstein was transported to a federal detention facility in Manhattan. For the first time in decades, escape seemed mathematically impossible. And then, only weeks later, before a trial could begin, before testimony could unfold, before the public could hear witnesses under oath, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell. Officially ruled a suicide. But the circumstances triggered immediate disbelief. Guards reportedly asleep. Security checks missed. Cameras malfunctioning. A high-profile prisoner suddenly unwatched. Whether viewed as catastrophic negligence or something more sinister, the result was the same. A courtroom full of answers vanished overnight. No cross-examinations. No disclosures under oath. No definitive mapping of who knew what. Epstein's death didn't close the case. It transformed it. Because when the central figure disappears, the mystery expands. And nearly 7 years later, as millions of documents spill into public view, investigators are beginning to confront a possibility that feels more disturbing than any single revelation. Maybe the biggest failure wasn't that Epstein existed. Maybe the failure was that the systems designed to stop predators proved frighteningly fragile when confronted with wealth and influence. But if Epstein is gone, why does this story still threaten reputations across the globe? Why are governments reopening inquiries? And why does one imprisoned associate remain at the center of questions no document has fully answered? To understand that, we have to examine the network he left behind. And the woman who helped build it. If Jeffrey Epstein was the architect, many investigators believe Ghislaine Maxwell was the engineer who helped keep the machinery running. For years, she moved through elite circles with practiced ease, polished, well-connected, and seemingly untouchable. The daughter of British media tycoon Robert Maxwell, she had grown up surrounded by influence. Power was not something she admired from afar. It was the atmosphere she understood best. When her father died under mysterious circumstances in 1991, his body found floating near his yacht in the Atlantic, Maxwell's world collapsed almost overnight. The empire unraveled. Fraud allegations surfaced. Billions were missing from pension funds. And suddenly, the life she had known was gone. Not long after, she appeared in New York. Then, almost seamlessly, beside Jeffrey Epstein. To outsiders, their partnership looked social at first, two sophisticated figures navigating the same rarefied spaces. But prosecutors would later argue something far darker, that Maxwell became a critical intermediary between Epstein and his victims. According to court findings, she helped identify vulnerable girls, approach them, gain their trust, normalize the environment, create the illusion of safety. Because predators rarely begin with fear. They begin with comfort. In December 2021, after a high-profile federal trial watched around the world, Maxwell was convicted of recruiting and grooming minors for Epstein's abuse. The sentence, 20 years in prison, was meant to signal accountability. Yet even after the verdict, the deeper questions refused to settle. How much did she truly know? Who else witnessed the warning signs? And perhaps most haunting of all, how does a system allow exploitation to operate for years inside some of the most protected social layers on Earth? The newly released 2026 files have intensified that unease rather than resolved it. Investigators reviewing the documents describe a sprawling web of interactions, financial ties, philanthropic donations, academic sponsorships, private meetings. Epstein had donated millions to scientific research, building relationships with prominent thinkers and institutions. To some, he presented himself as a patron of innovation. To others, a financier fascinated by the future of humanity. But philanthropy can do more than support ideas. It can reshape perception. Because generosity often buys credibility, and credibility discourages suspicion. The documents also underscore a crucial but frequently misunderstood point. Being mentioned in these records does not imply criminal conduct. Many individuals crossed paths with Epstein briefly, professionally, or socially. Some later expressed deep regret about those associations once the full scope of his crimes became clear. But scandals of this magnitude operate differently than ordinary cases. They erode trust not only through guilt, but through adjacency. Through the unsettling realization that monstrous behavior can exist disturbingly close to respected institutions. And that proximity forces society to confront a difficult question. Are our systems truly built to detect danger? Or only to react once it becomes impossible to ignore? Perhaps this is why the anticipated congressional testimony of Ghislaine Maxwell carried such weight in 2026. Lawmakers hoped she might clarify the gray zones the documents could not fully illuminate. What structures enabled Epstein's longevity? Were opportunities missed? Did influence shape outcomes? But when Maxwell chose to invoke the Fifth Amendment, refusing to answer questions that might incriminate her, it created a silence louder than any testimony. Legally, it was her right. Symbolically, it felt like another sealed door. And so the Epstein narrative remains suspended in an uncomfortable space between revelation and uncertainty. We know more than ever before. Yet the complete picture still feels just out of reach. Today, Epstein's properties have changed hands. His private island, once synonymous with secrecy and excess, stands as a stark reminder of how extreme wealth can construct worlds hidden from ordinary scrutiny. Meanwhile, investigators across multiple countries continue tracing financial pathways exposed by the files, following money, partnerships, and transactions that hint at how deeply interconnected global elites can become. Because in scandals like this, the story is never just about one man. It is about ecosystems. About the invisible architecture that allows influence to circulate quietly, often without challenge. Jeffrey Epstein is gone. Ghislaine Maxwell is behind bars. And yet the shockwaves persist, rippling through courtrooms, governments, and public consciousness. Maybe the most disturbing lesson is not simply that such abuse occurred. It is that the warning signs existed, and still struggled to break through layers of status, reputation, and institutional caution. History tends to search for villains, singular figures onto whom society can project its outrage. But the Epstein case resists that simplicity. Because when power concentrates, accountability often diffuses. And when accountability diffuses, silence grows stronger. The release of millions of files was supposed to bring closure. Instead, it delivered something far more unsettling. The realization that transparency does not always guarantee resolution. Some truths emerge clearly. Others linger in shadow. And perhaps the final question this scandal leaves us with is not just how Epstein operated, but whether the structures surrounding extreme privilege have truly changed or merely learned to protect themselves more carefully. If this investigation showed you anything, let it be this. Stories like Epstein's are not relics of the past. They are warnings. Warnings about what can happen when wealth outruns scrutiny. When reputation overrides suspicion. And when silence becomes more convenient than confrontation. Subscribe to the channel and like this video because we continue to examine the hidden intersections of power, money, and influence. Not for shock value, but because understanding how these systems fail may be the only way to prevent history from repeating itself.